The airplane touched down on the small runway carved into the turquoise of the Indian Ocean. Tourists pressed their faces to the windows, marveling at the postcard view, but Omar Hassan kept his gaze steady, his fingers tightening around Layla's hand. She pulled away gently, claiming she needed to check her phone. He smiled for the benefit of the flight attendant, though the gesture carried no warmth. Stepping onto the tarmac, they looked every bit the perfect couple. He in a tailored linen suit, she in a flowing silk dress that caught the sun like water. Cameras from fellow passengers clicked as they walked together toward the private launch. Layla adjusted her sunglasses, tilting her head with the effortless grace of someone used to attention. Omar trailed half a step behind, his expression polished but unreadable. On the speedboat, waves sprayed against their faces. Layla lifted her phone once again, the glow reflecting in her dark lenses. Her thumbs moved quickly across the screen, a faint smile tugging her lips. Omar turned his face toward the horizon, pretending not to notice, though his jaw clenched until the muscles ached. "Isn't it beautiful?" Layla asked, lowering her phone just long enough to gesture toward the endless blue. "Yes," he replied, his voice even, almost unreal. The resort greeted them with flower garlands and cool towels. Staff bowed, welcoming the Egyptian surgeon and his radiant wife to what promised to be days of peace and romance. To outsiders, they looked like a couple renewing love, escaping the burdens of work and city life. Omar allowed the illusion to linger, shaking hands, offering smiles, tipping generously. Layla leaned into him for photographs, her laughter light and practiced. Their villa sat on stilts above clear water, glass floors revealing fish darting beneath. A king-size bed dressed in white sheets faced an open view of the sea. Layla wandered barefoot through the space, running her fingers along polished wood, her phone still in her other hand. Omar set down his luggage with deliberate care, his eyes fixed on her reflection in the sliding glass doors. Later, at dinner, the candlelight flickered against Layla's face. She ordered wine, though she barely touched it, distracted by the vibration of her phone in her lap. Omar filled the silence with questions about her comfort, her appetite, her plans for the next day. Each answer she gave was brief, almost distracted, her gaze dipping toward the screen as if it whispered secrets louder than his voice. "You promised no work, no calls," Omar said softly when the waiter left. "I'm not working," she replied, tucking the phone away. Her smile was gentle, but it didn't reach her eyes. He raised his glass, studied her for a long moment, then forced a chuckle. "To us," he said. They clinked glasses, the sound sharp against the hush of waves. To anyone watching, it looked like love preserved in paradise. Yet beneath the surface, behind Omar's controlled smile and Layla's restless fingers, something fragile waited to crack. And when it did, the paradise around them would become the perfect stage for ruin. Long before the turquoise waters of the Maldives shimmered in her eyes, Layla had carved out a second existence on the cobblestone streets of Europe. While Omar's days stretched endlessly in the sterile glow of Cairo's operating rooms, her world shifted between cafes, galleries and laughter that belonged to a woman who did not wear his name. In Berlin she became Lena. To friends, she was an art student with a mysterious past, always arriving late but leaving behind the fragrance of jasmine and unfinished stories. She carried herself with freedom that Cairo had never granted her. Short skirts, careless hair, and nights that ended under neon lights. Nobody questioned her absences, nobody asked about her husband. Among those who orbited her secret life was Daniel, a photographer from Vienna, with an easy laugh and a gaze that saw her as more than the elegant wife of a surgeon. With him she was untethered. He snapped photos of her in alleyways painted with graffiti, in parks where autumn leaves clung to her hair, in hotel rooms where curtains filtered morning light. He never asked about the gold band she kept hidden in her jewelry box back in Cairo. "Why do you vanish so often?" Daniel asked once, camera dangling from his hand as he studied her. "I go home," she answered vaguely, tucking herself against him. "Everyone has a home they escape from." He laughed, not pressing further. Secrets made her alluring, and she wielded them like perfume. While Omar pulled double shifts in hospitals, perfecting surgical techniques that saved strangers, Layla lived as if hours were borrowed. She posted filtered photographs of wine glasses, bookshops, train windows, always under her alias. Each like, each comment tightened the web of her European self. And with each passing month, the woman Omar kissed goodnight became less real, replaced by the one who thrived abroad. But cracks formed even in freedom. Once, Daniel spotted a call flashing on her phone. Dr. Hassan. Her hands trembled as she silenced it. "Who's that?" he asked lightly. "No one," she lied. "An old friend." The answer passed, but unease lingered. For all her skill at compartmentalizing, shadows of Cairo seeped into her invented paradise. When Omar suggested the Maldives trip, she hesitated. He spoke of rekindling, of escape, of time for just the two of them. His tone was warm, yet beneath it she sensed something watchful. She booked the flights anyway, telling herself distance could mend what distraction had frayed. Yet as she zipped her suitcase in Berlin, Daniel's messages kept flashing on her screen. "When will you be back? Don't vanish on me again." On the island, as Omar raised his glass, Layla felt those whispers echo across oceans. Paradise could not silence the pull of her other life. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a name she dared not show lighting the screen. She excused herself from the table, stepping into the humid night. Waves crashed softly against the shore, masking her hurried breath. She lifted the phone to her ear, her voice low, almost desperate. And in that moment, Omar, watching from the villa window, saw what he had long feared take shape in her silhouette. The next day, suspicion would no longer be silence. It would begin to sharpen, cutting through every word she spoke. Morning spilled over the lagoon, pale light filtering through gauzy curtains. Layla stirred first, slipping out of bed with her phone clutched tightly. Omar watched through half-closed eyes, his breath measured, his body still. She padded barefoot to the balcony, scrolling quickly, lips parting in a smile she never offered him anymore. He rose silently, adjusting the watch on his wrist, pretending to busy himself with luggage. By the time she returned, her face was composed again, though her pulse thudded visibly at her throat. "Sleep well?" she asked lightly, brushing hair from her face. "Like a stone," he said, slipping his stethoscope from the suitcase and running fingers over it. The habit calmed him, grounding him in a life of certainty. But here with her there was no certainty. That afternoon, they walked along the beach. Layla trailed behind, snapping photos of seashells, letting the surf lick her toes. Omar carried their sandals, his gaze scanning her movements. Every time her phone buzzed, she drifted apart from him, laughter on her lips when she thought he wasn't listening. At lunch, her device lay face down on the table. When she excused herself, Omar reached across, flipping it over. A message preview glowed. "Daniel, can't stop thinking about you. When do I see you again?" Omar froze. His throat tightened, the edges of his vision pulsing with heat. He slipped the phone back just as she returned, smiling as though nothing had happened. "You didn't order yet?" she asked, sliding into her chair. "I was waiting for you," he replied evenly. His voice was calm, but beneath it raged a storm. That evening, the resort organized a beach bonfire. Couples lounged in hammocks, music drifted from speakers, the air thick with coconut and smoke. Layla swayed to the rhythm, laughing with strangers, her glass half full. Omar stood at the edge of the firelight, watching her with a surgeon's focus, precise, unflinching, dissecting every gesture. When she joined him, cheeks flushed, he asked, "Do you miss Europe?" She hesitated, eyes flicking away. "Sometimes, the art, the energy, and the people." Her smile wavered. "What do you mean?" He studied her, long enough to make her shift under the weight of his silence. "Nothing," he said finally. "Just curious." They returned to the villa in silence. The sound of waves crashing against stilts filled the emptiness between them. Layla slipped into the shower, humming softly, while Omar sat at the edge of the bed, her phone in his hand. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through messages that painted an entire life he had never been part of. Hotel reservations in Berlin, photographs of her with Daniel, whispered declarations of love. Each word cut deeper than the last, bleeding into the fabric of his carefully built marriage. The water stopped. Omar set the phone back exactly where it had been, his face carved into stone. Layla stepped out, towel wrapped around her, smiling faintly as though nothing was amiss. "Tomorrow," she said, crawling into bed, "let's go snorkeling. The reefs are supposed to be breathtaking." "Yes," Omar replied, his tone steady, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Breathtaking. But as the night deepened, his thoughts spiraled darker. Betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact, alive in his hands, gnawing at him, like a wound that refused to close. By morning, silence between them would no longer be enough. The cracks in the sand had widened, and soon they would swallow everything. The sky was clear that night, a black canvas pierced with stars that seemed impossibly close. From their villa's balcony, the ocean stretched endless and calm, a deceptive serenity that pressed against Omar's chest like a weight. Layla leaned against the railing, her silk robe catching the wind, her phone glowing faintly in her hand. "Still awake?" he asked, stepping out behind her. She startled, sliding the phone into her pocket. "I couldn't sleep. It's too beautiful to waste." Omar joined her, the scent of salt heavy in the air. He studied her profile, the curve of her cheek lit by starlight, and wondered how many times another man had traced it with his eyes. His fingers curled into fists at his sides. "You seem far away lately," he said softly. Layla glanced at him, brows lifting. "Far away? We're in paradise, Omar. Isn't this what you wanted?" "I wanted us," he replied. "But I see you chasing something else." Her lips pressed together. "You're imagining things." He pulled the phone from her pocket before she could stop him. Her gasp cut the silence, sharp as glass. Omar's eyes skimmed the screen, lingering on messages from Daniel, words brimming with intimacy, promises written as if she belonged to him alone. When he lifted his gaze, his voice was no longer calm. "Who is he?" She straightened, chin high, eyes glittering. "Someone who makes me feel alive." The words struck like a blade. "Alive?" His tone cracked. "I gave you everything. A home, security, a life most women would dream of. A cage," she shot back. "Your world revolves around surgeries, conferences, reputation. I was suffocating in your perfection. With him I could breathe." His jaw clenched, breath uneven. "So you built a second life behind my back?" "Yes," she said coldly. "And for once I won't apologize for it." The waves roared below, echoing the fury rising between them. Omar stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers. "Do you realize what you've done? You've turned our marriage into a lie." "It already was," she hissed. "You wanted a trophy, not a wife. I just played my role until I couldn't anymore." Her defiance seared him. He searched her face for a flicker of remorse, but found only steel. She believed he was too controlled, too bound by dignity to act. "You think I won't break?" he whispered. Her laugh was bitter. "You break? You'll keep smiling for the world, just like always. That's who you are, Omar. Respectable, predictable." The night pressed heavier. Stars glittered coldly, bearing witness to a marriage splintering into pieces too sharp to gather. Omar's chest heaved with the weight of betrayal, of years poured into a love she had already abandoned. He turned away, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles blanched. Silence stretched, broken only by the crash of waves. Layla slipped past him into the villa, her footsteps steady, unhurried, as if she had already won. Omar remained outside, eyes fixed on the endless horizon. His heart pounded against his ribs, rage battling restraint, love tangled with hate, until he could no longer tell the difference. By dawn, the line between them would blur beyond repair. And when it did, paradise would fall silent under the weight of blood and betrayal. The dawn broke crimson, streaks of fire across the horizon. Omar had not slept. He sat motionless on the villa's deck, the ocean murmuring beneath him, his mind circling the same images, until they blurred together, Layla's laughter for another man, the words she had flung like daggers, the hollow ring of a marriage gutted from within. When she emerged, dressed in a light sundress, her hair damp from the shower, she looked as if nothing had cracked between them the night before. She smiled faintly, reaching for her sunglasses. "Are you ready for snorkeling?" The casual tone ignited something inside him. "You think it's that simple?" he asked, his voice low, brittle. She paused, adjusting the strap on her dress, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want from me, Omar? Tears? Regret? I've given you my truth. Isn't that enough?" His throat tightened. "Your truth was built on lies." Her shoulders lifted in a shrug. "Maybe, but at least it was mine." The words shredded what restraint he had left. He followed her down to the beach, their silence a thread stretched taut. Tourists dotted the shoreline, but soon the crowd thinned as they wandered farther, where palms bent low and waves kissed untouched sand. Layla walked ahead, her bare feet sinking lightly into the earth. She held her phone in one hand, thumbs moving quickly, a smile flickering as she typed. Omar's steps slowed. Each tap of her fingers echoed like a drumbeat in his skull, until the rhythm consumed him. "Who is it now?" he demanded. She stopped, turning sharply, defiance blazing in her eyes. "Does it matter?" He closed the distance between them. "Tell me." "Daniel," she said, almost daring him. "He loves me in ways you never could." Something inside him snapped. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist, the phone slipping from her grasp and tumbling into the sand. She tried to wrench free, her voice sharp. "Let go." But rage had already drowned reason. Years of devotion, endless sacrifices. Every night he spent stitching lives back together while she unraveled theirs. All of it crashed in a single moment. He shoved her, and she stumbled back, sand clinging to her legs. Her scream pierced the air, carried by the wind but swallowed by the roar of waves. He fell upon her, his hands trembling yet unyielding as they pressed against her throat. "Stop," she gasped, clawing at his arms, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Omar, please." The plea cut through him, but not enough. Tears burned his eyes as his grip tightened, each second stretching into eternity. Her nails raked his skin, leaving raw lines, yet her strength ebbed with each gasp. The ocean surged, relentless, as her body convulsed beneath his. Then silence. Only the gulls cried above, their wings slicing the sky. Omar staggered back, chest heaving, staring at the stillness sprawled before him. Blood smeared the pale sand where her head had struck a jagged shell, crimson spreading like ink on parchment. Her eyes, once so alive with secrets, now stared unblinking into the sun. The breeze carried the scent of salt and iron. Paradise shimmered around him, indifferent, its beauty mocking the ruin at his feet. Omar sank to his knees, his hands shaking, stained with the life he had taken. Love, rage, betrayal, all blurred into one unbearable truth. There was no undoing what he had done. And soon the whispers of the island would grow louder, carrying his crime from white sand to every corner of the world. The body was found by resort staff, half buried where the tide had begun to claim it. Layla's silk dress clung to her skin, her phone shattered nearby, a single word still glowing on the cracked screen. "Daniel." Omar stood by when authorities arrived, his linen shirt streaked with sand, his eyes hollow. He offered no explanation, only silence. But silence itself became an answer. Police cordoned the villa, questioned staff who recalled raised voices, the tension no romantic getaway should carry. A waiter admitted seeing Omar alone late the previous night, asking for medical gloves. Said it was for snorkeling. The man stammered, but his hands were shaking. In the interrogation room, Omar sat beneath buzzing fluorescent light, his face shadowed, his jaw clenched. An officer slid photographs across the table. Images of Layla's bruises, the shell-cracked wound on her skull, the frozen terror in her eyes. "Dr. Hassan," the officer said, his tone measured. "Tell us what happened." Omar's lips parted, but words faltered. His mind replayed her defiance, her laughter for another man, her taunts that he would never break. A sob rose in his throat, quickly swallowed. "I loved her," he whispered. "Loved her enough to kill her?" The question sliced the air. Omar bowed his head, tears streaking down his face. He did not answer. In the days that followed, the case seized headlines. Egyptian surgeon kills wife in Maldives paradise. Images of Omar in handcuffs circled the world, his once respected name now bound to violence. Layla's European friends came forward, shocked to learn she had been married at all. Daniel appeared in photographs beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist, their smiles damning. The trial was swift but merciless. Prosecutors painted Omar as a man consumed by pride and control, unwilling to accept that his wife had lived beyond his grasp. They showed messages exchanged between Layla and Daniel, love letters that revealed years of deception. They argued Omar had not snapped in a moment of rage, but calculated, letting jealousy build until it devoured them both. The defense spoke of betrayal, of a husband blindsided by the cruelty of double lives. Omar's lawyer described a man pushed to the brink, a life of sacrifices mocked by infidelity. He was not a monster, the lawyer insisted. He was a man broken by love. Omar himself finally spoke, voice trembling, eyes wet. I gave her everything, he said, but she wanted more. She wanted freedom, another man, another life. I couldn't let her throw it in my face. Not again, not in front of me. It was like she wanted me to snap. His voice cracked, and I did. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge's gaze was unyielding, the gavel cold. The verdict came, guilty of murder. Sentence, life imprisonment. As the judgment echoed, Omar's shoulders sagged. The weight of paradise turned prison pressed upon him, leaving him smaller than he had ever seemed. He would never see the halls of Cairo's hospitals again, never wield the scalpel with steady hands. Instead, his name would linger in shadows, bound to betrayal and blood spilled on white sand. Layla's coffin returned to Europe, mourned by two worlds that never knew of each other until her death forced them to collide. To her friends, she was the woman who lived freely, recklessly. To Omar's family, she was the wife who betrayed him. In truth, she had been both, and neither survived. Behind prison bars, Omar stared each night at a wall painted pale blue. He imagined the sea beyond it, endless and mocking. He whispered her name into the darkness, sometimes with love, sometimes with hate. And in the silence that followed, he could never tell which one haunted him more.